Hi, I'm Mary Greendale. This is Just Thinking, and today we're going to talk trash and recycling. So as of July 1st, E.L. Harvey Waste and Recycling will be Holliston's provider for trash collection and recycling. They replace Republic Industries Waste Management. In a few minutes, we will explore the details of the new program. But before we start the local discussion, I want to put it into a global context. Yeah, global. Perhaps you've heard on the news that as of 2018, China no longer accepts our recycling. The market for recycling has changed dramatically, and the industry itself is in flux. Now that China has decided not to take our waste, many other Asian countries are struggling to protect themselves from becoming the landfill for the West. In fact, CBS News reported on May 29th that some of the recycling we have been sending to Asia cannot actually be recycled. We are including the wrong materials, and we are sending dirty materials. Malaysia is sending contaminated recycling back. So plastic products are particular problems, especially bags like this. These are not recyclable at all. In fact, they clog the sorting equipment and cause all kinds of delays and damage. We'll be talking about those guys and more. These bags are typically used for an average of 12 minutes, but take almost 1,000 years to deteriorate. And between 500 billion and 1 trillion bags are used every year worldwide. The global situation was well explained in a story on the Takeway on May 29th, which was on NPR. And I urge everyone to take 10 minutes and listen to it. It's all about the plastics. 73% of all beach trash is plastic. According to the United Nations, ingestion of plastic kills an estimated 1 million marine birds and 100,000 marine animals every year. In 2016, 480 billion plastic bottles were produced and collected. Half were sent for recycling. Of that half, only 7% were actually recycled into new bottles. That left 463.2 billion to go to landfills. And if you haven't heard the big kerfuffle about plastic straws, they are not recyclable. So if it's plastic, do not automatically put it in the recycling. Separate things. I know I've been making lots of mistakes. And remember to rinse out everything clean and empty only. If it's dirty, it won't be recycled. Here are the final words from the Takeway story I mentioned. The speaker is Kate O'Neill, an associate professor in the Department of Environmental Science, Policy, and Management at UC Berkeley.
What we can do better? I think one thing to do is really focus on cleaning recyclables, to focus on noticing what we're putting in the trash. Most importantly, to really communicate with our local authorities and recycling companies to hold them to account and, where necessary, to help them do better.
Kate O'Neill is an associate professor in the Department of Environmental Science, Policy, and Management at UC Berkeley. Thank you so much, Kate.
Ms. O'Neill's comments are a perfect segue to introducing my guest today. Jeff Ritter, immediately to my left, is the town administrator, and Michael Lavin is the chairman of Holliston's Sustainable Waste Management and Recycling Committee. Say that 3 times fast. Welcome, guys. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
So, why don't you just tell me, briefly what's coming? This is all taking place July 1st. We're going to get new barrels and so forth and so on. The new provider is Harvey. What are they going to be bringing us?
So on approximately June 17th, the carts are going to be delivered to the town.
Carts are what we call the barrels?
Yes.
Okay.
We don't call them barrels
They're not
anymore.
barrels.
We call them carts.
They're carts, okay.
And every resident will get a 35-gallon trash cart delivered to their house and a 65-gallon recycling cart delivered to their house sometime between June 17th and June 28th.
A 35-gallon is kind of like the metal trash barrel size? Is that kind of like that size?
Correct.
So that's smaller than the recycling barrel?
Yes.
Quite a bit smaller, almost half
Correct.
of the recycling.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, okay. So if in fact, how do I get rid of my old barrels? So you're going to bring these new ones in. I'm sorry, these carts are coming. You're going to bring me these carts. What do I do with old barrels if I don't want the barrels anymore?
You have a couple of options. You can keep them and use them for storage or for some other purpose, yard work or something like that. Or you can bring them up to Marshall Street. We'll have a dumpster up there for residents to bring their old carts up there.
Okay, so, and that would be the recycling bins too, the green plastic recycling bins?
Correct.
What do you do with those? You can take those to Marshall Street?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, we can't just leave them on the side of the street and expect the recycling person, people, truck to take them away.
They're actually outside of the recycling stream, so they're a rigid plastic. So
Okay.
when they're separated, then they can be recycled. In our recycling carts, they actually would become trash.
So there'll be some bumps in the road as we roll out the program. I'll just note that this hasn't happened in 20 years. We changed vendors, first time in 20 years.
Yeah, we had some problems with Republic, but I'm assuming that wasn't the only reason
That wasn't
we
the only reason. We wanted to do our due diligence and go out there into the market, and Mike and his committee have been really very instrumental in getting us to where we are.
Yeah, you guys have been great, and I don't know the names of all of the people on your committee, but I do watch the selectmen's meetings and that kind of stuff, so I've been very impressed with the work you've been doing.
It's been a bunch of great people coming together, and also help from Mass DEP. We received a technical assistance grant as well, too. So
you had a woman that would be on with you, and she was really smart in this stuff. You're also the DPW director in
the town of Rentham.
Town of Rentham. Okay, so you get to live this stuff day and night, day and night. This is great.
And we actually rolled this program out 2 years ago.
Did you? And is it going well?
Oh, very well. Yeah,
Good.
Very well.
Good. So does food waste still go in the trash? Mm-hmm. Okay. And these carts are picked up by that automated whatever. Arm? Okay, arms. Mm-hmm. Okay. So what do you do with the barrels? How do you carts? What do? You have to place them in a certain way?
Yeah, so we asked that they be no further than 3 feet from the curb, and they should be 3 feet apart from each other. So that way the arm is able to get them and actually knock over the barrel next to it, or so don't put it tight to a telephone pole or your mailbox or that. You want a little bit of separation. And it was also beneficial if you're able to have the lid facing forward so it opens to the street, so that it doesn't get caught up in the automation. So that's really kind of the basics of the cart placement.
Okay, keep the lid open to the street.
And there are arrows on the front that say,
aim this way?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So can I get more than one of these carts for trash?
You can get one trash cart, a 35-gallon trash cart for no expense. Anything outside of that, if you have more bags than can fit in the trash cart, then you have to buy a $2 sticker and put it on the bag and leave it outside.
So you can't just get a second cart?
No. However, you can get a second recycling cart.
Encouraging you to recycle.
That's the message.
Is that the message? Okay, let's remember that. We're encouraging you to recycle. Because I've got a little bit of a problem in the recycling, but we'll get there.
I'll just note that there is a charge for the second recycling cart. There's a $100 charge. Okay. But I was observing today, driving around town, that most people are not going to fill up every week a 65-gallon recycling cart.
Sure, no. So, unlikely.
So I think there'll be very few of those, maybe a large family would want another recycling cart, but 98% of the people are not. And
I would point out again, keep them clean, keep the things clean, especially if they're going to be standing in your garage for a week or two. Is the schedule going to be the same?
Yes. There'll be some exceptions to the schedule, but I'm told from E.L. Harvey that those residents will be notified in writing that their day has changed from Monday to Tuesday. Okay. And so we're going to still do trash stickers? Yes. Okay. Will they still cost the same amount? Yes. $2? Yes. And they're still available in the same places? Yes. Okay. All right. And then in terms of somebody, an older person who really only has one bag of trash and can't, can they move these things? The carts are very light and very easy to move. So I'm not sure what the weight is of a trash cart, but it's very easy. Okay. It's actually going to be easier,
It's actually one of the things that we found that we had seniors in other communities that they weren't able to actually carry out the recycling bin, but they can wheel out the recycling cart. Okay. So where they weren't able to participate in the past, they're actually able to participate today. Okay. Well, that's good because, well, I too found it to be kind of a pain to lug out all of the recycling. But so will the holiday process remain the same? Yes. So we're kind of we're not changing process as much as we're just changing the implements, the tools that we've been using to do this. Okay.
is the trash and the recycling picked up at the same time, just as it is now?
It would be the same day. So
The same day.
Two different trucks.
Two different trucks.
So you may have a lag between trucks, but again, we're going to ask everybody to have it out at 7 in the morning.
Okay, that's the
That'd
same.
be both trash and recycling, you know, because I know people get used to a time. These trucks are a lot more efficient, so that they're going to go through the routes a lot faster.
Oh, okay.
And they may actually change the way they do the route. So people need to make sure they have that out there at 7 in the morning so that they don't get missed. That if they're bringing it out at 10 and the truck has gone by at 8 o'clock in the morning, that's not technically a miss. We want to be good to our hauler and not have them going back a lot of times. So that's one of the big things. Make sure it's out there by 7.
Yeah, I mean, in my neighborhood on Roy Ave, so we got to the point where it was like, you know, 2 or 3 in the afternoon before they'd be rolling through. And like, well, you know, if you're out there at 9 o'clock, you're still early. But at any rate, so let's assume for the moment that something is not picked up. What do we do?
Call E.L. Harvey. And
Really?
Yes, call E.L. Harvey at 800-321-3002.
I want you to remember that, memorize
will.
that, get that right. You know, going to have that tattooed on your arm or something.
I will. I'm sure of it.
So you call directly. Now, this was one of the problems that existed with Republic.
Correct.
Was that you call and sometimes it would go into no man's land. Who's on the other end of this wire now?
Well, they have a individual who is devoted to this account, and they'll be responsible for responding. You're right. We were receiving dozens and dozens of phone calls at the selectman's office.
It was a nightmare.
It was a nightmare, and it went on for a year. And it was just really challenging. And I want to thank my staff now for all the torture they had to put up with unbelievable phone calls from residents.
Yeah.
Angry.
Angry, very.
And this was actually they have a customer call center in their facility in Westboro that's staffed.
Okay.
So when they're open, they have a call center of staff, and they have a manager of that call center.
Okay, so we're not dialing 1-800 New Jersey.
Exactly, and that was a past. It was an outsourced
Yep.
kind of thing that somebody tried to say, maybe we can save some dollars and this will be better,
Right.
but frankly,
Can't be.
It
Just can't be.
It didn't work very well.
No. So if obviously, we'll hope everything goes according to Hoyle and it all works smoothly and they never have to call the selectman's office. But I'm assuming in the fail-safe is always the selectman's office.
Yes.
You know, for everything.
Yes.
Yeah, no, whatever it is. Okay,
Yes.
so that's who they would call. Does the trash committee, or the trash committee, I'm sorry, let me say sustainable waste management and recycling? Is that it?
And I guess that's what we're trying to impose. It isn't just recycling. It's thinking about everything we're managing, and that's why it's a long name. But that's why we're trying to get away from this is just focused on recycling because
Right.
it's really our solid waste program, which
Okay.
is our trash, our recycling, our organics. It's all one big package, which is why the long name.
Yeah. You know, just to digress back to the comments that I made early on about the global picture and the fact that the United States doesn't have a place here where we don't have a process to recycle. We don't have companies, very little that are recycling.
Yeah.
Is that going to have to change?
And DEP is actively issuing grants to try and bring those changes. So they've been issuing grants for glass recycling processing, where they're using it in aggregate in roads and in other places. So they're trying to bring the industry back, but it's been very difficult. A lot of the paper, you know, that was our lumber companies. Those folks have gone, you know, and then we became very dependent on China because it was easy. You know, now the easy source is gone. So we're looking for alternatives, and you're finding our haulers are diversifying. So they're looking for all kinds of Asian markets and things like that. But I do expect we're going to see more domestically. And certainly the state is trying to do everything it can to help that.
But the fact of the matter is that you still are going to end up always with some product that just can't be either recycled or composted or whatever.
It has to go into the trash. Yeah.
Okay, so now trash right now goes to some landfills?
Wheelabrator.
And Wheelabrator, where we burn everything, right?
Yep, and we pay per ton there. So hopefully this program will have a positive impact on that, meaning we'll reduce our tonnage.
Because we're going to increase our recycling?
Our clean recycling, yes.
Our clean recycling.
Yes. It's all about education.
What makes you think we can increase our recycling?
Well, because I think that we're going to be doing more outreach and education through DEP and through other informational resources that we have, like the town's website is another great location to go for residents to see, frequently asked questions. We have a page up there on this particular program and how it's going to be rolled out. So we encourage residents to go there and study that question and answer document closely. And as we get more and more information, more and more resources, we're going to be posting that information up onto the website. For instance, how do you effectively compost? Right now, that information is not out there. Mm-hmm. So even if someone wanted to compost, they would have to use their own sort of ingenuity and resources and do their own education. We're trying to make it easier for people to get educated.
In your town, in Rentham, do you end up recycling more than you use for trash than you have trash?
We did. We also were a modified pay-as-you-throw program, very, very similar to what we have here in town, which is 1 barrel included, and then we have overflow bags. We do 96-gallon containers every other week. The selectmen wanted to stick with the weekly program, which is why the 65 felt like a great fit for Holliston. One of the things that we're doing is we're making it easier. So currently today we're doing a dual stream. You have to sort out your paper and your bottles and cans. Where today we're going to go to a single stream, or an all-in-one, where now you'll no longer have to separate that all out. It's just important that it gets clean. And then it all goes into the one container now rather than sorting it all out. And that makes it easier. Then we're going to give you the largest container we can to make it, again, as easy as possible for you to do it. But it also cleans up the neighborhood. When you have that paper out there on a windy day, we've all seen it.
Oh, yeah,
the neighborhood
sure.
looks like a ticket-day parade.
Yeah.
Where today you have it's a very clean and uniform look.
Yeah.
These carts tend to stay right where they're placed, and we don't have that mess. So it's really we're doing a larger cart to encourage the recycling. And going to that single stream, which is really where the whole industry has gone to. So we're catching up to the industry, so to speak. But the more opportunity, hopefully, the easier it is, the more we'll get, to help defray our costs. I mean, there's always been a cost to recycling. I think that's something people didn't realize. It's just the revenue offset the cost. Today, that's not the case. But we're still going to be paying hopefully about half for our recycling than our trash. So so every pound we can get over there in the recycling container is that much less money we're spending.
So what happens if we don't meet this? It just means that the cost for removing trash will just keep going up and up. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's basically out of our pockets, us being residents. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll just say one other thing about the carts. It's recommended that residents put their addresses on the cart somehow with a magic marker or some other way of identifying it. Every cart has a serial number. So literally when the truck goes by to pick up your recycling, the truck has the ability to determine whether or not the recycling is contaminated or not, right on the spot.
How does it do that?
It has a camera right in the truck. The driver is actually able to see the load going into the truck.
Wow.
So they're actually looking at every single one as they're getting emptied.
I think what that demonstrates is just how serious, in terms of the whole big picture, the whole thing is. Mm-hmm. Just we're running out of places for all this plastic in particular. I mean, let's face it, we're just so dependent on it. So I guess the one thing I would wonder is, will you ultimately get reports? Like now you've told me every one of my trash, or not my trash, but my recycling is going to be photographed. Okay, so now will you get reports that say
yes,
50% of the people are meeting the standard?
Well, we'll get reports, when we request them by address.
Aha! Oh my gosh.
So,
the recycling police.
Yes, I mean, that's the ultimate end. We don't want to go there.
Yeah.
But we want to educate people to recycle smartly. Yeah. We don't want to get into the business of fining people.
Right.
So that's what we're going to do for now.
Okay, so, but at the year or a month's end or something like that, you could get a report that sort of gives you an idea of whether or not.
I think it's a monthly report.
Okay, that's sort of proportionately how things are going.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay, yeah. In the direction of recycling and that kind of thing. Okay, and then is it still cheaper to recycle? You said 50% cheaper to recycle?
Right now, based on the market, so what they have is a baseline cost that all of the haulers were saying based on their processing costs.
Okay.
And then it's a revenue or a cost base from that. That Harvey's was about $25 less than everybody else on their baseline cost, which is another reason that made them attractive.
Sure.
Is that they really were very aggressive. But that's what I'm saying. So, you're looking at a baseline cost and then the $30, so it could be in the $30 to $40 range at this point. We're paying almost $70 for our trash. But that's going to fluctuate. It's one of the challenges for the town is that they're now going to have to worry about, how do I budget for an unknown? We're completely dependent on a market that we have no control over.
Absolutely.
So it's certainly a budgetary challenge.
Sure.
But again, the cleaner we have it, the lower our haulers processing costs are. Which will then translate into the less we're paying. Some of the other haulers actually had contamination fines built into their contracts, which were 10%, which is basically the average today, and then going down to 2 and 5% as the years. So that you would always be paying. It really was not the best contract. So it was really good.
Whether it was contaminated or not, it was just sort of built in.
And so right now, a contamination rate on average everywhere is about 10%. And they were setting that as their minimum. Anything under that would be an extra charge on top of the processing costs.
Amazing.
And you'll probably see more of that in the future. But we're lucky in the next 5 years. We're not going to have to worry about that because Harvey's, again, was aggressive and they didn't add that extra threshold in. But, their processing costs will change. So that all comes in, and that's why it's so incumbent on us to make sure we're putting the cleanest material we possibly can out there so that they're able to get the most money they can for it. And at the end of the day, we all pay less.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I learned is when they're talking about contaminated trash or contaminated recycling in this case, they're not talking that some chemical managed to find its way in. They're just saying it's dirty or it's something's in there that doesn't belong in there, and now that means somebody has to manually.
When people put their recyclables, bags. And they do a really good job, a lot of us do, we line our containers at home, our recycling containers in our kitchen, in that plastic bag. When that plastic bag goes to the recycling facility, they throw the entire thing away.
So all
they
your
don't open it up. No one is doing that. That entire bag is just sorted out and thrown away. So the plastic bags are the number one thing to not put in your recycling.
Okay, that would be true if you were using a plastic trash bag, too, something like a Glad bag.
You see that. People actually use plastic trash bags. I mean, particularly when you start recycling more, you'll see homes will have a trash barrel and a recycling barrel. They're both the same size because if we're doing this right, we're actually recycling more than we're creating trash.
Right.
We should be up to almost 70% of what we're disposing of is actually all recyclable.
Is that really the case? That's what I was going to ask.
And it gets higher if you get into composting. So it's in the mid 60s to low 70s, but it goes even higher when you start doing food waste. You can cut that down to 15%, which that's further in the future. But if we're doing it right, 65% of what you're throwing away should be recycling. So
really?
It makes sense. Yeah, so it makes sense for that container to be bigger. So that's the next step is people have the 2 trash barrels that are the same size and one. They line them both the same way.
Yeah, but you can't do that with the recycling. Yeah. You just have to empty out the bag. I mean, you can reuse the bag, right? Leave the bag in there.
Or you can continue to use the bin you're using today and just dump it in the recycling bin outside.
True.
Which is sort of how I, because people are concerned, where do I store these? And I can't put them in my home. And when we don't bring our trash barrels in our house either. So keep it out there next to your trash barrel. It takes about the exact same footprint as a trash barrel, and keep your smaller container in your home.
Yeah.
So for that way, you really don't have to change much.
You can really, I'm surprised. The numbers surprise me in terms of what you think you can recycle because, well, this is sort of the segue into my show and tell. Okay, so I have brought, for the last couple of weeks, I've been collecting products that, would I recycle this? Could I recycle this or whatever? And we will be showing the graphics of a website, the Mass Smart, what is it called? RecycleSmartMA.org. And then there's also the one where also part of that same thing is where you can go in and in Recyclopedia, which I thought whoever came up with that has got to get a little bonus in the paycheck this year. But anyway, the Recyclopedia, there you can see it at the top of the screen. You can just type in anything, and I typed in wax paper. Well, wax paper is not recyclable. And that leads me to, for example, we have this box. Now, the cardboard box is recyclable, but I have to flatten it. But I also have to remember that inside there's this thing. And whether this is wax paper or plastic, and I'm not sure, I guess this is plastic, this is not, correct?
It is not.
It is not. Okay, so let me show you what else I found. This, who doesn't buy rotisserie chickens, right? So there you buy your rotisserie chicken, and unless my information is wrong, I can recycle this, but I can't recycle this. Why can I not recycle this?
So it's probably closer to that rigid plastic, and you'll have to look at your numbers on the bottom of them.
Yeah, this says 5.
Yep. So if you're looking at that, that probably should be based on that number. So
It should be.
Yeah. So I'm
Tell me
surprised
about
that
the
they're saying
numbers.
they're not. So it's 1 through 7.
Yes.
Is your numbers and that's really what's considered your recyclable plastics. They're probably more worried about the food contamination from that.
Huh.
Is what I'm going to gather.
Okay. Because they said if it was black plastic, no.
Well, and that depends on which black plastic. So a lot of times we're talking about like those pots we get from the greenhouses. They all
No,
come in
it was
black.
in the food container thingy.
Yeah. So they may very well be weird, and that's why what they've tried to do with that Recycle Smart website is have a statewide standard. So some haulers did, some haulers didn't. So that's really what that they're trying to create a statewide standard so everybody's collecting the same thing. But usually rule of thumb, if it has the 1 through 7 on there,
Okay, well, that's
it is.
really helpful because, in all seriousness, with everything I've been reading on the sites and everything else like that, I didn't find that.
Yep.
And so maybe when you're doing your materials, really reinforce the fact, because I got to the point where I was thinking that maybe these things didn't matter anymore. Maybe we'd abandoned that entire labeling system and that it was no longer relevant. What are these?
Completely recyclable. Don't bother taking the cap off. Don't worry about your label. Absolutely, it's one of the highest value in the market. That and aluminum.
Aluminum, you mean like cans?
Yep, your aluminum cans. Yep. So that your soda cans and all that. If you're not bringing them back, the aluminum cans actually hold some of the highest value in the recycling stream.
Okay, and you don't have to take the label off?
Nope. not
Okay,
at all.
that's
But
good.
you do need to wash them.
Yeah. So we don't. Yeah, exactly. Because we don't want what happens.
Clean,
is,
clean, clean, see?
Because you get the food waste in there, it contaminates everything else it's with.
I even cleaned the cat one, and I really hate doing that. But anyway, are these really plastic, tin, or whatever, aluminum?
That's probably more of a tin can. So usually it's your soda cans and things like that to the aluminum. But they actually have processes at the facility that picks out the different metals.
So does this, you do recycle these?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. This little sucker can, I went and I bought whatever this was, ravioli. And I thought, wow, wait a minute, there are no numbers, I'm assuming no.
Yeah, that's going to fall more to your plastic films, which are not.
Plastic films, and that leads me right into this big, vast wasteland. I mean,
Exactly. Yep.
it's not.
Some of those are.
If they say that they are recyclable,
So that's saying more you can remove the label, which is saying on the remove the
Yeah.
label for recycling.
Yeah.
So the label is, but the rest of it isn't. And
oh, is
sometimes,
that what it's saying?
Yeah.
I couldn't even understand what the label was about.
So it can, and some of the bags actually say they're actually designed to be reusable. So you're seeing that in some of your communities where they have plastic bag bans. They allow a heavier gauge, with the assumption, and they put on there that they're a reusable, recyclable bag, meaning you can reuse it more than once.
Yeah,
but it still
but
doesn't
it's-
go in the recycling stream.
Okay. And then the bags that come with.
Yeah, and that would not be. So
Okay,
that's
so we've
again,
got, this is sort of the plastic film, plastic film, plastic film. Same thing with the bags that come in.
Same thing.
Okay, there. Then this thing, which comes with, it says plastic film right on it.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming, even though it has the little triangle, not,
It's
because I
not-
looked it up, they
yeah,
are not.
And not in our municipal stream. So I mean, it's just like your plastic bags you're getting at Stop and Shop.
Right.
You can bring those back to Stop and Shop, and they have recycling containers there. So you can, if you wanted to actually recycle your plastic bags and some of these films, those can actually
I
go
can
back.
take this, like to Shaw's has one of
And
those
you want
little
to check
gazebos.
with each one of the vendors,
Okay.
because everybody probably has their own kind of rules around it, but they all have the containers to take back the plastic bags, and when they're sorted separately, there actually is a market for them.
Okay, so this is kind of where my fear is. It looks like all these things are going to take up more room than what I'm throwing. No, these are recyclable. This is what I'm throwing away. I'm going to have more landfill trash than I am recyclables.
And some of that is front-end thinking about how you're purchasing things. Maybe you
Yeah.
don't want to purchase single-use containers. You know, that's sort of the biggest culprit. So are your single-use containers like that ravioli container kind of a thing? You may want to look at that. And that's part of some of what what this whole process is trying to do is get people to think about their purchasing in the front end.
Okay, let's talk about purchasing in the front end. So now what do I do? You mean I have to make my own ravioli?
Or a larger container, or larger container size.
You're nodding yes. What do you mean? You want me to start making my own ravioli?
Yeah.
At this
I
late
love the
date?
homemade one. But
That's great. You go over and make it.
yeah, exactly.
All right,
That's
so
but
part
it's
of the
getting
issue-
away from that single-use type
then,
containers.
okay, so now we're talking about Mary's use of, what do you call it, online shopping. I mean, let's face it, you got the Land's End, and we probably have an Amazon in here. Yeah, so those things they really generate a whole lot of.
And a lot of the Amazon actually, they come in the cardboard boxes
Yeah.
that you break down and you can recycle.
I do.
Yeah.
That I do. Yes, definitely. And we already talked about these suckers, those compostable things, and we talked about this. So both of these can go, but the straw cannot. All right. I think I've got it. I think I've got it, and I'm hoping like crazy that that this will work. That I'll actually be able to get more recycling and less trash. That would be great. I used to have garbage pickup. When I first moved here, we had garbage pails in the ground, and there were still pig farms in Massachusetts. There's really only one in Oxford, I think, now. But at any rate, I used to be able to count on the guy coming every week, to pull out the garbage. So someday, is it likely that if we go into the compostable thing that we're going to have to separate food waste from landfill waste?
So we're already looking at some of those programs. It's something that the state has put into their master plan. That actually is a major part of the success of their master plan, is compostable materials. So it is definitely something that we're looking at again in the future. And there's something to have been said to those buckets for the pigs. But obviously, like you said, right, the pig farms aren't there. But they also can go to waste to energy facilities and composting facilities. And so that's another one of those things that DEP is trying to put the seed money into creating those communities. And there's a lot of different grant money out there, even for municipalities, to explore those type of programs. Just very similar to what we're getting. We're getting the cart grants, for example.
Right.
So because we went with the smaller 35-gallon cart, we're actually going to get $30 per household for that cart.
Right.
And the larger recycling cart, they're going to give us $20 towards that cart.
Because they're, again, encouraging this whole recycling thing and discouraging trash.
Yep, and that's really, so, a few years ago, that smaller car, it was only a $15 grant. So when we did it a couple of years ago, we only received $15 for that. And DEP has looked and said, this is the priority. This is how it's going to make things work. And it's good to see them actually having some money behind the programs because, for us, that's over $200,000 that's coming in.
Sure, that's
at a
big
time where
chunk of change for us.
we know our costs are going up anyway, no matter what we do.
Right.
So that's certainly helping ease the pain a bit as this comes in basically unrestricted. It's not, we get grants annually that we have to spend towards recycling programs and that, but this is coming in as an unrestricted grant. So the town is actually able to use it for whatever we need to this year.
Now, when you look at like digesters, I did a manure digester project once, and it was a farm in Rutland, dairy farm. So we don't have that many of them in Massachusetts. And they were taking food waste like from colleges and that kind of stuff. It went through someplace facility in Chelsea. And then they actually shipped that waste all the way down to Rutland and added it to the manure to heighten the heat, basically. It was just to get it up there. And they sell electricity to the grid. They take care of their entire farm. They heat greenhouses, and they heat their neighborhood, all from solid waste. I mean, from food waste.
And the state is already requiring large institutions to do that.
Yeah.
And that again is back to their master plan and how are we going to make this work.
Yeah.
So you need those. You sort of need those sources to make it economically viable for people. So you see your larger colleges now, your larger institutions. They're all now being required to do that as part of the state waste ban, which is part of, even if we didn't want to recycle because it costs us too much, it's still a waste ban. We're still not allowed to put those recyclable materials in our trash.
So then what would you do with them, right? I mean, really?
And so you have to have that market. And that's sort of their answer, because there are actually communities where they have terrible contamination rates. They're paying over $100 a ton for their recyclables right now. And it sort of changed the whole conversation when suddenly it's cheaper for me to throw it in the trash container.
Yeah.
And that's their answer is, well, it's still against Massachusetts regulations to throw it in
Okay.
your trash container.
That makes
And they
sense.
actually expect the haulers and the receiving stations to do audits of our trash when they come in to make sure we're not exceeding thresholds, that we have too many of these recyclables in our trash. And they're very active with that. And
So we got the cameras at one end, we got the inspectors farther down the line in the process and everything. We're getting really, really serious about this.
Yeah, it's
You
a lot
know?
to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to use the carrot versus the stick, and meaning the carrot of education, educating the residents and the public about, doing more with less is really the bottom line.
Is there anywhere that page that shows the pictures of these things can be recycled and then these things can't be recycled, is there anywhere that that's going to be printed?
Yes.
Because there are so many people who, or some people anyway.
It'll be on the website, on
Right.
the town's website. We're also doing a direct mailing to every resident.
Okay, and it will include that little thingy?
The flyer will
Yeah.
have some of that information on there,
Yeah.
but it's going to be directing residents to the website to get further information.
Okay, but I still think there are some people for whom they have to see it in writing.
Yes.
They're just, I
It's
don't know,
tough.
it doesn't,
I've done a lot of mailings, and I'll find people who aren't doing it, and my mailing is thrown right on top, not opened. So it honestly.
There's that too, yeah.
So it's difficult. Obviously, one-on-one I found has been what's best to affect behavior.
the tax bill is
You
usually
know.
a pretty good place to put it.
Well, that's if it costs you. But again, you don't want it to be. It's again, like Mr. Ritter was saying, a carrot instead of the stick. There's no one in town hall wants to be out there being the trash police, and no one really wants someone at town hall going through their trash barrels. But the DEP actually pays for enforcement people, and there's grants out there that if the town wants to hire a dedicated person for that, there's grant money to do that.
I have a future.
Yeah, and I live in a community where I have some pretty diligent people who they go around themselves and go through the barrels and they'll knock on people's doors and say, hey, maybe you shouldn't put this in here, kind of things. And
Seriously?
yes, they get some pretty gun ho folks out there.
Whoa, I guess so. I wonder if we have anybody like that in Holliston. We'll wait and see.
Maybe a couple.
We'll see. And then would they bring them down to town hall, the stuff that doesn't belong? Or?
Stockade.
Hopefully not.
Oh my goodness. Well, did we forget anything?
I don't think so.
Okay, so reminding everybody, this is July 1st.
Yep.
The barrels are going to be, those carts.
Yep.
These recycling and trash carts will be delivered between the 14th and the 28th.
17th and the 28th.
17th and the 28th.
Yep.
Delivered to your door. And then you can get rid of your recycling bins and trash barrels if you really want to get rid of your trash barrels by taking them to Marshall Street.
Yes, we'll have a dumpster up there from E.L. Harvey for
Okay.
several weeks.
Okay, that'll be good, especially given that some of the bins are cracked, broken, and otherwise. What happens if something damages the cart?
Call E.L. Harvey, and they'll arrange for a replacement.
Okay, so if you drive over it yourself, you're backing out of the driveway and you drive over your cart.
Call E.L. Harvey at
800.
800-321-3002.
And there'll be a fine line there. So
Yeah,
the
I was
carts,
gonna say.
the carts are guaranteed for 10 years.
Okay. If nobody drives over them.
But if it's completely driven over, obviously the cart manufacturer is going to say that's certainly nothing that was wrong with our cart. But a lid gets cracked, a wheel pops off. That's what actually happens to these carts. Wheels pop off, a lid breaks, that kind of stuff. That's the thing that the manufacturers just warranty without a second thought.
Okay.
But if your cart disappears or gets driven over, that's going to be one of those concerns. Well, that there may be a cost to replace it.
Yeah.
But it's
How much do they cost?
That's why you have a serial number recorded and your name or your address on the cart. So,
How much do these things cost? $100, did you say?
well, that's what the sale price is for a recycling container or recycling cart. But a trash cart, I think, is more in the vicinity of $50.
Not bad. bad, really, when you think about it. It's a nice
I
cart.
mean, if we're going to Lowe's today, we're spending
spend
you're
that.
spending almost $100 for that same cart.
Yeah,
You know, and
yeah.
if the wheels break tomorrow,
Yeah.
you're out of luck.
Yeah, right.
So at least there's someone here who's managing these things, who's delivering them. It's outside of town hall. It's another thing that Mr. Ritter's staff isn't getting calls that that's being managed through
1-800.
our- exactly.
You'll notice we haven't used the selectman's office number once today.
You know, well, we really part of the decision-making process in looking and evaluating our haulers was their customer service. You know, we had some
went through so
issues,
much. Oh.
and so customer service was a major component of our bid.
Yep.
And you know, there are 2 pages of fines to the hauler for failure to do things. You know, and obviously some responsibility was on us to make sure we're doing some things. But
Yep.
But it's a local family-owned business
Yep.
that's a town and a half away.
You know, the only thing, this last time in watching all of the process with Republic and so forth, I know that you ended up penalizing them, and so in the aftermath, you would hold back, you know, $11,000 or $10,000 or whatever the dollars were. Okay, still doesn't help as much as just having somebody respond in the moment.
Absolutely.
You know, the money is really irrelevant at that point after you've been spending weeks of debating with people, fighting with people, listening to them, and so forth. So I think that's the least of it. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for all of your time.
Thank you.
Maybe we'll do a scorecard and come back in a few months and see how everything is going, see how it rolls out. Yep. Thank you very much for making the effort to do this. I think it's great.
Thanks for helping us get the word out.
Yeah.
All right.
Because really education is huge, and we all have a stake in it.
Yeah, we sure do. All right, thanks, folks. And remember just the takeaways that I will give you. Those plastic bags, don't try to recycle them. Don't put your recycling in it, and clean things. Remember, rinse out the spaghetti sauce and all that stuff. So, all right, we'll talk to you again next time, and thank you.